Yeah, good afternoon, all the students. Let me present the screen to you. Can you see the presentation?
Okay, welcome to this.
Can you
Not
see
yet.
the presentation?
Not yet, ma'am.
Not yet. Now?
No, ma'am.
Second, I'll share it again. Now it's visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Now let us just recap what we have done in the last class and then we'll proceed with today's class. In the last class, we have seen Hadoop's parallel world, how Hadoop serves as an open source platform in order to perform voluminous data analysis because the data is being generated at a larger pace when compared to previous days. And also we are trying to deal with diversity in the data and the volumes are very large. We are trying to do it very efficiently with the help of open source platforms like Hadoop. And we have also seen how old approaches were very rigid, where there is no flexibility in scaling up the infrastructure, or there is no flexibility in extending the processing capacity, which used to be very expensive. But in the new approaches, it has how it has become very easy. We have seen very elaborately and clearly. In new approaches, rather than moving the data to and fro between various nodes in the network, we are trying to move the computation itself to the place where the data is residing, so that we can save on network bottlenecks, and we can save on network bandwidth, and we can save on precious amounts of time in order to perform the analysis process very quickly. Okay, and next is how data discovery helps organizations in order to gain a competitive edge in the market against their counterparts. How data serves as a precious resource to any organization. And we also discussed on open source technologies for big data analytics. How open source technologies are very economical, and though they are under some open source license, how they're very easy to download and quickly adopt it when requirement comes, without any hierarchy of permissions required, or without any requirement of large investments. We can use these open source technologies whenever the requirement arises, and scaling up with these technologies are also easy when compared to traditional proprietary software. All these we have discussed in the last class. And now let's move on to the cloud and big data. In cloud computing, it has actually not been a successful business model for organizations to work with big data due to reasons like technical, political, social, regulatory, and cultural. Say there are some issues when initially cloud computing started being introduced into the market, like technical issues. It is not very initially it in the initial stages it may require some transition from the older technologies to the new cloud computing technology in terms of some technicalities where some issues were arised. And political, the higher authorities in the organizations may not be very much keen to adopt this new technology, because sending the data outside the organization to be stored on cloud, that may affect their data privacy. right? In such cases, the organization's high-level management may not be keen to go with this kind of technologies. And social, even the people they found, say patients, if patients' data is being analyzed and patients are not ready to provide their consent for their data to be stored on cloud, like that some social what to say agitation, or again the people are against this kind of technology, and regulatory and any cultural impediments, lot of such obstacles have obstructed this cloud computing technology to enter into the market and become a successful business model in the initial days. But huge return on investment, huge ROI opportunity lies underneath if cloud is adopted by industry verticals. What is the rate of return on investment? The investment will be very less, but the returns that you expect on that would be very large. Because if you want to set up a new organization, and if you want analytics model to be put in place, in such cases you need not right away invest all the money to start up this entire data center to be attached to your company. You can just hire it from the cloud. Data storage you can hire, infrastructure you can hire, software you can hire from the cloud, and start working with your company, because you initially can't expect what would be the requirement in future, because you start any company at a smaller scale. But after that, if your organization is growing really well, if your organization is performing really good in the market, then it may have to be expanded. Or if it is not very promising, then you may have to cut down your costs. In such cases, instead of investing directly on the infrastructure, if you are able to hire it, then it will be easy for you to say expand, or in cases of losses, cut down on the cost. Okay, it is like paying as for as much as you use. Infrastructure, how much you use, data storage capacity, how much you use. When your company is a small company, you may be generating very less volumes of data, so you require very less storage space. But as the company keeps expanding, then you may have to store more amounts of data. In that case, you may require large data storage spaces. In such cases, this contraction and expansion in the requirements can be better handled by cloud, rather than investing on the core infrastructure within the company itself. Okay, so that kind of flexibility is provided by this cloud. That is why the huge rate of return on investment, the huge ROI opportunity lies underneath if cloud is adopted as by industry verticals. And problems like limited capital can be resolved. Why? Because you need not get budget approvals for the entire investment. You can just take the approval for hiring the service for some small amount of time, and based on your progress you can further decide whether you want to continue with that service or not. So problems like limited capital can be resolved, exploding volumes of data can be conquered, because when the volumes of data keeps increasing, you go for hiring more storage capacity. And diversity in the data also can be handled. So initially you're working with only nominal amount of data, like some images or like some text, but later you may want to analyze even audio, video data. In such cases, the processing power has to be increased. So when, as the diversity in the data keeps on changing, you may have to increase your processing capacity within the organization. In such cases, cloud comes to the resort. Cloud will be at your rescue. You can take, you can increase the processing capacity, you can increase the data storage capacity by simply hiring it on the cloud and getting your work done very easily. And reducing the manpower. You can also reduce the manpower, but streamlining the operations are addressed by combining the technology of cloud with big data. So you can, when you're able to increase the processing power, when you're able to cut down the cost of establishing within your organization, then you need not employ extra personnel, right? You need not employ extra employees. Say if you want a data center within your organization, in that cases, you may have to put a data center administrator. You may have to put a, say, bandwidth allocator. Many such employees have to be recruited into your organization. But when you're doing it on cloud, when you're hiring it on cloud, that extra manpower can be reduced, that extra cost can be reduced until your organization becomes stable in the market. And driving forces include, driving forces means the forces which lead towards the success of cloud along with big data, or the driving forces which drive any company towards adopting this cloud and big data are lower capital intensive infrastructure costs and business challenges that lead to cloud deployment model. Okay, now the business challenges are increasing. Lot of competition has arisen in the market when compared to olden days. You see, in the olden days, say, you can take the example of cloud itself. In the initial days, there are not many companies providing this cloud services. But now companies have mushroomed in the market, and the competition has increased to gain a stable place in the market for such kind of business challenges. In order to meet the business challenges, in order to address the business challenges, this in order to keep speed with your counterparts in the market, the organizations have to take up cloud and big data to immediately start expanding if at all the requirement arises. Now, cloud model provides pay on a subscription basis with no upfront capital expense. What is upfront capital expense? You need not invest anything in the beginning in large amounts, right? So you can just take sign some terms and conditions and take the service on a rent, and for how much you use, you can pay for that amount of usage. Okay, so it is called as pay on a subscription basis. You can hire the services, use the services, and pay for as much as you use. And also, there is no maintenance fee. Normally, when you buy some softwares or when you buy some products, there will be annual maintenance fee, right? Annually, you might have to get it checked whether it is working according to the expectations or according to the benchmark. If it is not working, so some maintenance is required, right? So every product or every software has this annual maintenance that have to be done, and for that they charge some fee. But when you are taking the services on the cloud, there is no such maintenance fee. All the maintenance will be done on the service provider side itself. Okay, so you can get rid of this maintenance cost, and all updates on the platform are automatically available. Any updates, any features added, any upgradations done to the software or to any service you are utilizing, any new features that are added, everything are automatically available once you once you run that new version of the software. Okay, you just need to run some upgradation what to say cycles, so that all the new features will be automatically available for the services you are using or you have rented from the cloud. And massively scalable platforms where the marginal cost to deliver an incremental product or service is almost zero. So you can get the services of massively scalable platforms. You can increase your platforms at a massive scale, but at a very marginal cost. Initially, before this advent of cloud, before introduction of this cloud into the market, whenever some massive scaling has to be done to an organization, it proved to be very, very expensive. But nowadays, because of the services provided on cloud, if you just want to increase the capacity of your platform, massive scaling can be done still at lower cost, still at marginal cost. At it can deliver incremental product or services. The service can be the added services can be delivered, and extra features or extra processing capacity can still be deployed, but at a marginal cost. And it enables to build massively scalable platforms by adding new products and services with no additional cost. You just ask for increased capacity of processing or increased data storage. They just charge you for the extra usage, but you need not pay anything to put them in place or invest on it. Okay, that is how cloud has provided us a flexible environment where we can scale up our business or cut down on the costs. Everything is very easy to be done. So what is the famous quote here that we can say is, the next industrial revolution is where the raw material is data. See how beautifully this quote is framed. Raw material is data. The raw material is data in the data factories. It is being used in the data factories for performing the analysis. The next industrial revolution is where the raw material is data, and data factories replace manufacturing factories. You know the industrial revolution, right? It happened during Second World War time. Industrial revolution, and then green revolution, white revolution. You might have heard about all these kinds of revolutions. When some revolution happens, it changes the it creates a milestone in the history of mankind. The green revolution by M.S. Swaminathan. It created a revolution in the history of mankind where the production capacity has increased drastically by usage of some fertilizers or pesticides. That is actually not a positive strategy, but still green revolution discusses about a milestone that has happened in agricultural sector. In the same way, milk white revolution is with respect to milk, dairy and dairy products. Okay, when milestone has been marked in the production of milk and milk related products, that is called as white revolution. Now the next industrial revolution is where the raw material is data. Raw material is treated is data itself, and data factories are now going to replace manufacturing factories. So data factories will start analyzing volumes of data, and they come out with very interesting results that may be useful for many organizations in the market. Now, what is predictive analytics? We came across these terms, right, in the initial classes. Descriptive analytics, predictive analytics. What is predictive analytics? Something, the analysis, data analysis task that tries to predict something. That tries to predict something into the future. Okay?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, you are presenting first slide.
Now, it hasn't changed.
No, ma'am.
What's the slide you're seeing?
That first
What
heading.
slide?
Module 2, lecture 2. It's
Then why you didn't tell me till now? I have already changed 2 to 3 slides. 1 second. Network is not proper, I think. Now tell me whether it is moving or not. Okay, I thought still I'm giving you the introduction itself. Now you can see the screen. You can see the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Which slide? Cloud and big data.
Yes, ma'am. The cloud and the big data.
Now I changed the slide. Can you see the quotation here in the last line?
No, ma'am.
It's still with the new slide only.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my God, what happened? Here you can see, right? We'll continue like this. Here you can see the change.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now you can see this predictive analytics.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. Now, anyway, you can go through the PPT. I'll share it with you. So what all points I have discussed, if you go through, you can recollect very easily. Now, enterprises started moving from business intelligence to predictive analytics. What is business intelligence? Initially, when some data of the customers is being analyzed, which is used to frame some policies or which is used to take some business decisions so that they can introduce something into the market or they can study the pulse of the customers in the market. That is called as business intelligence. Now, enterprises started moving from business intelligence to predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is they wanted to predict something into the future. Okay, now what customers are requiring? Now, in next 10 years, what would be their requirement? If at all they can predict what customers would require after 10 years, then they can meet the customer requirements without any interruptions, and their market will be stable for the next 10 years, right? That is the importance of predictive analytics. If they are able to understand what would be required by the customer for the next 10 years, do not understand what customer required in the previous 10 years or what customer requires today to start a business. If you can understand what is required by the customer for next 10 years, then as a startup, you can be successful in the market, right? That is the importance of predictive analytics. Now, combining internal and external data sources. Can you see me mark on the screen with red pen? Students? I'm trying to mark something on the screen. Can you see this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. You just listen to the lecture. Anyway, I'll once I upload it, I think it will be clear for you. So combining internal and external data sources will make the predictions more accurate and meaningful. Now, not only the data that is internally available to any organization, but the external data sources also plays very important role in making the prediction, and that too very accurately and meaningfully. So whenever data is being generated within the organization, now if that data is combined with say social media accounts of the customer or his Instagram account or his say Twitter account, all that external data sources also, if you are able to combine with the internal data sources like how the customer what is the customer purchasing behavior and what is the customer's say buying risk associated with that customer in order to provide him a loan. Okay, rather than studying institutional data, rather than studying data internal to the organization, if at all the external data sources also can be combined, then the predictions would be more accurate, right? And by using contextual analytics insights, business events can be triggered to reduce friction in the business. Now, what is contextual analytics? Analytics based on the context. Say when you go to Pizza Hut and try to buy something there, then your purchasing behavior is analyzed with respect to your food eating habits. Now, when you go to a medical store and buy something there, and that purchase is analyzed with respect to your health, and when you recharge your set-top box for a particular package, for direct to home services. Then they understand your behavior with respect to your viewing, what kind of content you are interested to view. Okay, so one customer is being analyzed from different perspectives based on this by taking this contextual and to get contextual analytics insights about that customer. Okay, so one customer is not being analyzed from only one perception. He is being analyzed from different perceptions in order to understand his various purchasing behaviors or his various viewing behaviors, and based on that, business events can be triggered. Okay, now that customer has bought pizza and then he has subscribed for a movie, or he started watching movie on OTT, over the top streaming channels like Amazon or Netflix. Okay, all this can be related. He got a pizza and he is watching a thriller. After that, he has purchased something online. Okay, if all these can be put in a sequence in order to understand something about the customer, then you can an organization can come out with a plan. Something like Inox Theatre can come out with a plan that when you are watching a thriller movie in Inox Theatre, you can have 50% discount on the Pizza Hut kiosk in that particular Inox movie theater. Okay, such kind of combination of discounts can be offered, targeted to a particular customer in order to increase the business, in order to trigger the business events, in order to increase their profits in the market by retaining the customers, to make the customers be interested in their services. Okay, and this reduces the friction in the business. Business friction can be reduced, flexibility in the business can be increased. Another example for this is supply chain optimization. What is a supply chain? Right from procuring the raw materials, sending it to the manufacturing unit, and getting the finished products, taking it to the market through some transportation using the logistics, and finally introducing and finally putting it into the market at the disposal of the customer. Okay, this entire chain is called as, this entire sequence of transactions are called as supply chain. Now, how to optimize this supply chain? You might have seen in Amazon, when you buy something, you will not get the delivery very immediately, right? They will give you, if you want it immediately, they'll charge some extra cost. But if you want it after weekdays, okay, they'll give it for, they'll do the delivery for free. At that time, do they deliver each and every product to each and every customer separately? No, they'll try to optimize their logistics. They will try to pile up all the orders in a particular locality, and they'll try transport it at a time in order to save on the fuel, and in order to save or manage the fleet or the transportation vehicles. Okay, so that no vehicle is kept empty. At the same time, all the vehicles are being utilized 100% optimally, at the same time ensuring customer shopping experience. He should be delivered in ample amount of time, good amount of time, not too late, or if at all he doesn't want early, not too late, but he should be delivered in some good amount of time, right? So they will analyze what would be the deliveries in a particular area and pile up all the deliveries and send him in a given amount of time. That is why they can promise a delivery time also. When you book something in Amazon or Flipkart, they'll give you an expected delivery time, right? How do they calculate that? By analyzing what are the other deliveries booked with respect to that PIN code. That is why initially they'll ask you to enter the PIN code to show whether there is free delivery to that PIN code or not. Did you observe that? So that will help to plan their logistics with minimal cost. So supply chain optimization is mainly about using lesser resources, but at the same time increasing the user experience and increasing their profits in the market. Okay, so at lower utilization of resources, higher productivity if they can achieve, That is called optimization of the supply chain. And how that can be achieved by contextual analytics insights. At each step in the supply chain, they perform some analytics and they try to reduce the utilization of resources and try to increase their productivity. Yes, students? Is it very clear now? Okay, let me go to next slide. We have to do it manually. Yeah, you can see the slide now, usage of predictive analytics.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now, predictive analytics is widely used in recommendation engines like in Netflix, Amazon. You watch some movie, they immediately give you suggested movie list. You buy something, they immediately give you suggested product list. These are called as recommendation. And how that is done in the background, recommendation engines work in order to analyze for how much time you have searched for the product, and in whatever products you have searched in depth, and which product you finally selected. And in the previous days, customers who bought this product also bought any other product, so that they can suggest the same product to you to increase their purchases or to enhance the user experience on their site, so that the user need not go to search bar again, type for the related product, but he'll be readily suggested by the recommendation engine. Okay, all this will increase the user experience with that shopping site to retain the customers. Now there is a lot of competition between Amazon and Flipkart in the market, but still Amazon is very stable in the market compared to Flipkart. Why? Because of its recommendation engines working very appropriately by analyzing the customer's purchase behavior, search behavior. Search also matters a lot than purchase. What they are searching for. If they're able to find the right product at the right price, immediately it will be clicked to make a purchase. And that is, again, addition to the company's profits, right? That is how recommendation engines struggle a lot, work a lot in order to understand the customer. And what are risk engines? Say in order to find the credit risk. If at all a loan is granted to an employee to a customer, what is the risk involved in it? 80% risk is there, means 80% chance is there for that person to become a defaulter of the loan, and only 20% chance is there to for him to pay back the loan. Okay, that risk calculation based on his credit scores assigned by RBI, Reserve Bank of India, to him. Okay, all this processing is done at the back end by risk engines, and whenever the customer parameters are entered into the analytics application, immediately this risk engines will analyze whether he'll be a defaulter or whether he'll be a good payer of the loan. Based on that, he will be given given a score by that risk engine. Okay, this much chance is there for him to be a good payer, this much chance is there for him to be a defaulter. Okay, that is how risk engines work. And innovation engines are used in product innovation. Whenever a new product have to be designed, in such cases, if this is the design, who would be the targeted customers? Now a product, when you're say you have started a company, and you want to design a product. Now, if you design that product for only, say, affluent part of the society, affluent means richer people. Affluent sector means where richer people only buy that particular product. Then your market will be very less. But you remember, in India, 80% of the wealth is in 20% of rich people's hand, and 20% of the wealth is in 80% of the population's hand. Okay, in this case, if you are targeting a product to the population, if you target it to the affluent section, your market will be very small. But if you target it to lower middle class and middle class people, then your market will be very huge, right? So that is how product innovation engines work. They try to see who are the targeted users of a particular product, how much market it can conquer, what price have to be introduced, with what price that product have to be introduced into the market. All this will be analyzed very well by this product innovation engines, and in what way the design should be. Okay, if it is targeted for children, the design should be simple. If it is targeted for young people, the design should be somewhat aggressive. If the product is targeted to senior citizens, then it should be very easy to use, at the same time self-explanatory. It should be self-appealing. All the features should be self-appealing so that they can understand it easily and start using it. Okay, so the product innovation it is targeting which kind of customers, what is the ease of usage, what is the technical level, all this have to be analyzed, right? All this can be done by this product innovation engines. This kind of analysis can be run at the background in order to derive some important decisions about the design of a product. And what about drug discovery? When some drug has to be introduced into the market, you can take example of the recent COVID vaccine. Now, when this vaccine is being discovered, they have to keep in mind lots of demographics, right? How it would affect younger children, how it would affect adolescents, how it would affect young people, how it would affect elder people, how it would affect older people. Okay, so what would be the effect of a particular drug according to the demographic factors, whether they are male or female, which sector of people it is targeting, and in what way it could affect them. All this analysis has to be done very clearly in order to reduce the adverse effects of the drug and make it more useful to the targeted population. And consumer and fashion trends. For this also innovation engines are used. Most of the young children, most of the young people, they are going for matching masks in this pandemic time. So whenever a dress has been introduced, a design has been introduced into the market, if it has a matching mask, then the sales are more. Because the current trend is that mask has to be bought in association with any dress. Okay, that is how the thought process runs in order to analyze the consumer and fashion trends, to innovate some new fashions and introduce into the market. And customer insight engines, in order to understand the customers deeply, to target some advertisements to them, because customer lifetime value is important to any company. I keep giving this example that retaining a customer is more better than finding a new customer. In such cases, if you can understand the customer in depth, then you can target the advertisements to him. Targeted discounts can be given to him in order to retain the customer with that particular organization. Say you're traveling too much in this year in business class in airlines, then immediately that airlines company will give you lots of discounts on business class or in economic class. Because you're traveling too much in this year, but next year because of pandemic you're not traveling too much, then maybe they can give you discounts on nearby places rather than international travels. Okay, so based on the environment, based on the societal circumstances, based on the customer's previous traveling behavior, they can address some customer targeted discounts so that that customer will retain with that company for a long time. That will increase the customer lifetime value for the company. Okay, that is how customer insight engines will work to understand the pulse of the customer. And next, optimization engines. Optimization engines, again, I can give you the example of supply chain management here. Supply chain optimization here, where at different levels, this optimization engines are used in order to reduce the resource utilization, but at the same time, increasing the productivity in a given amount of time. Okay. So predictive analytics can help organizations realize the uncontested market space If you go in a rat race with the existing organizations, in the same way as they move in the market, then you can't show your difference in existence, right? Only if you can show your difference from the other organizations, only when you can show your mark in the market against other counterparts, then only you can gain a stable space in the market, right? So uncontested market spaces have to be explored, and it can also be used to set path to new opportunities. Okay, so wherever the not going across along a path that is set by others, but this predictive analytics will help an organization to set its new path to trail, so that it can be a trendsetter in the market to conquer large share in the market, right? Now, next is software as a service. One second. You can see this, right? SASBI. Students?
Yes, ma'am.
So SaaS as a business model. Here, SaaS is called as software as a service. Software as a service business intelligence model. This is adopted by companies like Salesforce.com, where they just provide softwares as service. They don't provide it as a proprietary software, but they provide it as a service, so that the people can start using their software by hiring it and configuring it according to their requirements and start using it. And the basic idea is to make it easy for companies to gain access to solutions without the headache of building and maintaining their own on-site implementation, right? They need not invest anything in order to develop it on their site and recruiting extra manpower in order to develop the software and test it, then start using it. If at all there are any feature updations, again incorporating them into the software. All these extra overheads need not be borne by the companies now, because software is being given as a service. And it is very economical. Why? Because again, as I said, you don't require any investment. You don't require to recruit extra manpower. You can just download it, deploy it, and start using it. That is why it is economical. And solutions are sold by vendors on a subscription or pay as you go basis with no maintenance fee. So how much ever you use, that much you can pay, and there is no annual maintenance fee also need to be paid. Actually, AMC costs are very high with traditional softwares, but that is not the case when it is provided as a service. There is no maintenance fee associated with it. And good choice, it is a good choice when organizations face budget issues to buy business intelligence software and related hardware. So whenever the organizations want to set up this business intelligence software, they have to also purchase related hardware, configure them, deploy the software, and start using it. But that kind of overhead is not required when you are using the software as a service. There is no budget issues are not prevalent in this. Why? Because you need not write letters for budget approvals, need not wait for budget approvals, and if high level authority are against setting up such kind of business intelligence software, they may not be ready to approve that budget for getting it in place. In such cases, this software as a service, you can convince them that not much investment is required in order to set up this business intelligence software. A nominal price just to hire it, and let us see how it works. If it doesn't work, we can avoid it, or if it works, we can proceed with it. Like that, you can convince the high level authorities in order to start working with this kind of business intelligence software, because it is being provided as a service. and no upfront purchase costs or additional human resource requirement is needed. You need not have to search for heavy investments. You can just use it by hiring it as a service. And there is lower cost of TCO. TCO is total cost of ownership is very low because you just have to hire it and start using it. You need not invest it to establish it within the organization. And immediate access to talent who can also deliver sophisticated services within a simple business intelligence portal is also available. See the last point, the example we can give here is SAS, that is statistical analysis system. In this business portal, they give the services of statisticians who can serve something like someone like a data scientist to analyze your data and how you can interpret the analysis results and take some decisions out of it. Such kind of statistical expertise can be provided by hiring them as a service on business intelligence portals like salesforce.com. Say our organization doesn't have that required expertise in the organization. We didn't still recruit because ours is a startup. We haven't still recruited any high level employees who provides good expertise to the analysis process. In such cases, only that kind of expertise, say auditing expertise or analysis expertise or data science expertise, these kinds of skills can be hired over business intelligence portals without having to directly recruit them into the company if we are lacking funds or if we are lacking budget. Now everything can be just rent and use it up to what extent you require them. Now what are the reasons that make this SaaS BI model succeed? The scalability of the SaaS delivery model, you can scale up when your requirements increase, or you can scale down when your requirements are reduced. They keep coming down. Okay, so the scalability of SaaS delivery model is very flexible and at a lower cost. You can get it at a lower cost and focus on customer success. They mainly focus on customer success. They need not focus their time more on how to establish that service, but they can see how that service addresses the requirements of the customers. In that way, they can focus on the customer service, customer success, and they can relieve the IT choke points because they need not recruit any development team, or they need not train the business experts to use this interfaces or the dashboards that are used for analysis process, or they need not spend time in developing the manuals because the analysis applications are very easy to use, or they can just use it as a service over the cloud. This extra training times and all can be saved, and IT team can spend their productive time on other development application development side. They can spare their time. They need not be engaged in all these backlogs that are provided by the business high level managers to teach them how to use the interfaces. Okay, so this service software as a service will relieve the IT choke points and increases the productivity and saves the productive time of both IT development team as well as the high level authorities, and transforming BI from cost center to a revenue generator. Business intelligence hereafter is no more thought as a cost center. It is not thought as a white elephant. It is not thought as a huge investment. Now it has transformed into a revenue generator. Okay, the investment costs have come down. It has become very economic in order to establish business intelligence departments or business intelligence portals in any organization, because it is being provided as a service. And the user experience also is being enhanced because of this SaaS business intelligence model. But what are the drawbacks? Whenever there are first, there are also some points that would be against any technology, right? So what are the drawbacks of SaaS BI? You can see this, right? Drawbacks of SaaS BI. With SaaS BI, that is with software as a service business intelligence, the analysis tools may not have all the features that on-premise software products do. That is obvious, right? Because you're compromising with cost, because you're compromising with time, because you're compromising with flexibility in usage, you may have to compromise with some features that on-premise software products provide, right? Always proprietary software products will have higher features when compared to software provided as a service over the cloud. So with SaaS BI, the analysis tools may not have all the features that on-premise software products do. So sending corporate data beyond the firewall also may not be supported by high-level management, because when you're sending data to be stored on cloud, then always some thoughts about confidentiality arises, right? There doubts about confidentiality arises, right? In such cases, the corporate level or the high level management, they may not be ready to send their data outside the firewall of their company. So sending corporate data beyond the firewall also raises red flags, raises some false alarms for some IT managers. It may not be safe in order to store it on a cloud. How sure they would be about their confidentiality, protecting the confidentiality of the data. All this will be deliberated hugely when data has to be sent outside the organization. But one alternative being followed by vendors to address the above issue, that is sending the data outside the firewall of the company, is to create private analytic clouds. So one mediocre solution is private analytic clouds that run inside a customer's firewall. So if there are clouds that can be set up within the organization's firewall as private analytic cloud, then they can store all the data within the cloud that is allotted to the organization as a private cloud, and that data can be analyzed for extracting some business intelligence out of it. So this is one alternative that is suggested so far in order to address any issues by IT managers that they don't want to send their data outside the organization firewall. As they have a solution, that is private analytics cloud, which can be set up within the company's firewall so that the data can be stored within the company, but provided as a service by the cloud service providers. Okay. So the next lecture, we have topics on mobile business intelligence, crowdsourcing analytics, and inter and trans firewall analytics. So let me see why these slides are not changing when it is being put as a slideshow. I'll see to it, and by next class, I'll try to resolve that. Any doubts in today's class, students? Okay, I'll stop the recording before taking the attendance.